Good morning, guys. So this morning I was in Genesis 22, and as I'm reading it, there was just so much in it that God kept pointing out to me. He's like, read that again. Read that again. Now go back and read that again. And here's what he's wanting me to impress on you guys. You guys have those things in your life right now that you're waiting on. You have those promises that God has given you, those manifestations of those promises. And I don't mean that in a new agey way. I mean the physical, tangible thing that God has promised you. That manifestation, that physical thing that God has promised you, and you're seeing it come to pass. But you feel him asking you to hand it over. You feel him asking you to take that thing up to the mountain of God and lay it before him. You feel him telling you, surrender this to me. I know I promised it to you. I know I said it's yours, but lay it out in front of me now. I want you to give it back to me. And I've talked about this before, and it's probably the most difficult thing you can ever do is take that thing, that promise, that thing, that heart's desire that you have, and say, okay, God, no matter what, I trust you with it. Because let's really stop and think about this. This is the only child that Abraham ever had. This is the only promise he got from God, was that he was going to use this child to give him descendants, to make him a great nation. And now God's asking him to kill him. Now God's asking for it back. Now God's asking him, how much do you trust me? Are you willing to be obedient to that place? To giving it up to me? That thing that you love so much, that dream that you have had forever. Are you willing to give that up to me? And the entire time we read about it, we so often skim it, and we're like, yeah, he's walking up the mountain. Yeah, he gave Isaac the wood, and he carried the flint and the knife. Do you realize Abraham carried the knife he was going to use to kill his son, that he knew he was going to have to use to kill his son? Do you think that thing in his hand wasn't burning him and tempting him the entire way? Don't do this. Keep it. Do you think the enemy wasn't plaguing him every single step up that mountain with his son, staring at his son, just him and his son, every single second? Do you think he wasn't begging God to give him answers on how he was going to do it, on why it had to be done this way? But Abraham still had the faith to do it. And so as he ties up his son, and his son trusts him, don't miss that part either, that this is a 16-year-old kid capable of carrying all of the wood for the burnt offering. So this child is not a 5-year-old. He's a 15-year-old who could have overpowered his 115-year-old father. And yet he was submissive enough to his father to trust him, whatever that looked like. Because his father had instilled in him such a trust in God, whatever that looked like, that they could both stand there and say, okay, Lord, I trust you. And then as he raises that knife to kill his son, as he raises that knife to lay out and just slaughter the thing he loves the very most in his entire life, for the one thing he loves even more, which is his God, God stops him and says, don't do it. And don't miss this. In the NIV version, it says there was a ram behind him. The scriptures tell us that God goes before you and he goes behind you. God provided for behind him. He didn't see it. It even says when the angel of God spoke to him, he looked up. It doesn't say he looked down. It doesn't say he looked around. It says he looked up, because he looked to God in that moment. What do you want me to do, Lord? What are you asking me for now? So Abraham looked up, and then God provided a ram behind him. So he goes and he gets the ram and takes his son off of the altar and puts the ram on there instead, and names the place Jehovah Jireh, where the Lord provides. That's what God is going to do for you in this season. He has given you this dream. If he takes it away and asks for it back, if he asks you for your surrender for this thing, it's because he's going to provide for you. He's going to either make it better or provide an alternate to be sacrificed, to be submitted to him. Your God is going to provide for you. Your God is going to show up for you. Because the next thing we read is, because you were willing to do this, because you loved me enough to sacrifice your son, the one you dearly loved, the promise I gave you, because you were willing to give that up for me, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. Because you were willing. You need to have that willing, obedient servant's heart so that you can serve the Father and trust him in all things, because he will provide. I love you guys. Be blessed.